Hey guys, welcome back. Today, as promised, we are going to be talking about gluing PLA. So many of you know that I am in the process of creating a coffee table made out of 3D printed gears, and I chose to use PLA mostly because it's what I had on hand at the time. For an example, this is one of the gears. It is in 2 pieces and it will glue together at 4 spots on the gear. So I wanted to do a little bit of testing to figure out what would be the best way to glue PLA together. And I went with just your basic options. So the way that I decided I would test this is to print out a couple of these little half circle pieces and sand them down a little bit, glue them together, holding them with a clamp, and then try to pull them apart and see which would be the strongest hold. Now this isn't the best test as something with a weight pull on it so that I could actually test out the weight it took to pull them apart would be a better option, although I don't have one of those, so we're just going with whatever seemed like the hardest to pull apart. And there was a definite winner and a definite loser. So let's talk about the glues that I decided to try. So the first glue that I decided to try is the Loctite Ultra Stick and Seal Universal Adhesive. Now I have used this in the past to glue PLA pieces together. The one big thing that you need to keep in mind is that it does yellow over time. Now this wouldn't necessarily matter for me because these pieces are all going to be primed and painted and have a finish coat applied to them. But you might not want to use this as it will yellow. The other thing to keep in mind is, and I don't know if it's all of these tubes or just this one, but it oozes out like freaking crazy. You cannot even squeeze the tube, and if you open it, it will leak all over the place. So keep that in mind when you're applying. The next glue that I decided to try is the Duco Plastic and Model Cement. This was actually pretty cheap at my Ace Hardware, aka work, and it only cost me a couple dollars. I figured it was worth a shot since it is specifically made for plastic pieces. This was actually really easy to use. The big downside on this one is the smell. It was such a strong glue scent. I would say the strongest out of all of the glues here. But it was really easy to use, really easy to apply. And the third glue that I decided to try was the quick and easy new Bond and Fill Cellular PVC cement. Now this was recommended to me by one of the guys that I work with, thinking that it might work for the plastics I have here because it works well for PVC. This tube is a little deceiving because it does look like a standard caulking tube. But when you open it up, you have this. Now I have used this multiple times before. It works really good as a filling agent. However, it is really messy and really difficult to work with. I find that it also separates a lot, so you have to really mix it up the best you can. Once you squeeze it out, you also have to mix it up some more. So it's not the easiest product to use. The next glue that I attempted no longer has a label on it. This is your good old-fashioned Gorilla Glue. It no longer has a sticker on it because I've used the crap out of this. I use Gorilla Glue all the time. It is kind of my go-to super glue. The good thing about it is it's relatively inexpensive and easy to get. The last glue that I decided to test out was an epoxy. It's what was recommended most often when I was throwing things out on Twitter or just asking questions of people who had glued plastic before. And this is the epoxy that I decided to get. It is the Gorilla Glue Epoxy Sets in 5 Minutes Clear. It was really easy to plunge this down at the same time, and I got a good amount of product out of both sides of the tube, about the same amount, and was able to mix that up relatively quickly and easily. I have to say, this was actually one of the easiest products to use. It wasn't overly goopy. It was not super stringy. It was a good consistency. It was easy to hold together, and it was just tacky enough to help it hold without feeling like I was going to be making a mess all over the place. So overall, I was really surprised with how this turned out. The last product that I decided to try to use was plastic itself. Now this was not the best option only because I don't have a 3D printing pen, which probably would have been the best way to try to adhere the two plastics together. Plastic bonds to itself, you would think that it would work out pretty well. So instead I used a blowtorch on the end to see if that would hold it together, and it just did not have enough of a bond. The problem with using plastic is it's going to cool down too quickly for you to get the plastic on both sides, or in these gears case, all 4 spots, and push them together before the other parts have already started to cool. I clamped them together and let them sit for 24 hours before trying to pull them apart, and I did leave them in the clamp for the full 24 hours to help give the best case scenario. So once they were glued and the glue was set, I asked Nick to grab a stopwatch to see how long it would take me to pry them apart using as much force as I could. Now obviously the timing on it was not the best way to tell. The best way to tell was the strength that I felt like it was going to take to pull those pieces apart. And there was a very clear winner. There was also a very clear loser. The worst, aside from the plastic itself, which failed, was the plastic cement, which I was really surprised about because this is specifically made for plastic. This one was the easiest to pull apart. It took like 0.2 seconds for me to pull this sucker apart, and it was really easy. I could have just basically knocked it on the table and it probably would have flown apart. The next was the bond and fill. This one again was super quick to pull apart. In addition to that, it left a white haze on everything because it is in the color white. On top of it being not the strongest, it was also a nightmare to work with. So I would not use this in this type of project. So the next two were pretty much tied. That is the Loctite Ultra and the old school Gorilla Glue. Both of these worked phenomenally well. The difference is in the ease of use, and the original Gorilla Glue is much easier to use than the Loctite. Now, my Gorilla Glue was not the easiest to use because there's not a whole lot left in here and it's almost dried up. But the tip on this and lack of excess squeeze out that you get with this one means that this is the second best option that you have when it comes to gluing pieces together. But the overall winner was by far and away the 2-part epoxy. In this case, Gorilla Glue 2-part epoxy. It was by far the hardest for me to pull apart, taking a full second for me to pry the two pieces apart, and it had the most resistance in pulling them apart. Plus, it was really easy to use, a lot easier than I had originally anticipated. So overall, it was a great product. But I will definitely be using the 2-part epoxy again. I think this retails at Ace Hardware for like $6 or something like that. And this will probably get me through this entire project. I hope that you guys have found this video useful, entertaining, exciting, anything like that. If you have any other suggestions for glue, please leave them in the comments below. Or if you have any thoughts or questions or concerns about this video, leave those down there as well. A huge thank you to all of my patrons for supporting me through Patreon. I could not do videos like this without your support. I mean, there's like $20 worth of glue here. So every dollar counts, and I definitely appreciate every single one. I hope that this video has enticed you to subscribe if you haven't already, and don't forget to give the video a big huge thumbs up if you enjoyed it. And I hope that you guys have an awesome rest of your week, and I'll see you guys again next time.